Hey everybody, are you thinking about buying a Blue Yeti? Well, don't. You need to see this video first. And if you're a podcaster, streamer, or content creator, chances are you've heard of the Blue Yeti microphone. It's almost legendary. It's praised everywhere as an easy-to-use, beginner-friendly mic. But how did it become such a staple in the podcasting world? Well, the Yeti was the first widely distributed USB mic, or one of the first widely distributed USB mics, making it kind of accessible to everybody when USB recording tech was still new. Combine that with its sleek design and impressive marketing, and you have a microphone that quickly captured the attention of creators everywhere. But is the Blue Yeti still the right choice for podcasting and live streaming in 2024? Well, today we're digging deep into why the Yeti became so popular, looking at the challenges it brings, and exploring smarter alternatives that can raise your audio to more professional levels. I'll be doing a couple of comparisons so you can hear if the Yeti is a good choice for you and your needs. Ready to dive in? Let's go. So why do so many people recommend the Yeti? For starters, there's its plug-and-play simplicity. Just one cable, and that's it. You're good to go. No need for an audio interface or a mixer or a steep learning curve. It's fairly affordable, and the retro aesthetic looks great on any desk or in any live stream setup. But does it actually sound as good as it looks? And we can't really ignore the marketing factor either. Blue has done a great job branding the Yeti, and they've done a good job positioning itself as the mic for beginning podcasters and streamers. It's often one of the first microphone names you'll hear when somebody asks which mic to get for podcasting or content creation. And over time, this reputation has grown, almost snowballing into kind of a default or de facto status. While the Yeti might offer simplicity, there's more to the picture when you get into the technical side of audio. And to understand the Yeti better, let's look at microphone technology. The Yeti is a condenser microphone, which means it excels at capturing details and subtle nuances in your voice. That's why condensers are so often seen in recording studios. You'll see singers singing into condensers because of that subtle nuance and detail that they capture. Condensers are great for studio environments, but they're not so great for untreated rooms where background noise and reverb can creep in. And let's face it, this is where many podcasters, live streamers, and other content creators record. Most of them don't record in nice sounding rooms that have acoustic treatment. Dynamic microphones, on the other hand, they're much better at rejecting background noise and making them a better choice for podcasters and streamers who record from home or in less than ideal recording spaces. While condensers like the Yeti have a detailed sound, that sensitivity, it works against you unless your environment is controlled. Understanding these differences is key when you're choosing the best mic for your needs. And let's get one thing straight. The Yeti is not a bad microphone. As you can hear on this video, when it's used in a treated space, which I'm recording in here, it can sound good, or it can produce good sounding results. But good doesn't always mean it's the best fit for podcasting or live streaming. For starters, its tonal profile can sometimes come across as harsh and lacking warmth. And that can require extra tweaking in post-production in the form of having to do more EQ work. This isn't a mic that I would choose to use, and I can use any mic I want in my space. Additionally, super-sensitive condensers, they don't play well in noisy environments, whether it's the hum of your computer fan, the sound of outside traffic, your neighbor's barking dog. The Yeti picks up everything. I've even had a ticking grandfather clock get recorded into a track using a condenser mic. When I asked the guest what that sound was, he didn't even realize I could hear the clock because it's so quiet in his room, but it sounded so loud on the recording. While these issues can be addressed somewhat with noise reduction, that does add time and a little complexity to your workflow, and that's something that many content creators prefer to avoid. And the reality is tools like noise reduction, they cause other problems too, like they create artifacts and can lead to audio that sounds overprocessed. Here's where things get interesting though. The Yeti's reputation doesn't always match its real-world performance. With so many recommendations from places like Sweetwater and Guitar Center to podcasters on social media and even YouTubers, content creators often expect a mic to have this kind of magical transformation in their audio quality, only to find out that achieving professional sound requires more effort than they thought. It's not as simple as just sticking a microphone on your desk and you're going to sound great. I've seen far too many stories from podcasters who started out with a Yeti and got frustrated with how their audio sounded, and they quickly returned the mic or had to just go out and get a brand new one. Room noise, echo, and reverb are the issues that most beginners aren't prepared for, and the Yeti, it just amplifies all of those imperfections. The disconnect between the reputation and the reality has left many wondering why the Yeti is so commonly recommended. So let's unpack some of those challenges. Untreated rooms are one of those challenges. Without acoustic treatment, the Yeti tends to amplify reverb, making your recordings sound distant, and the recordings will sound kind of hollow. And like any mic, it does require careful placement to get the best results. And the included desk stand, it doesn't help with this. Many people look at it and just assume you set it on your desk and that's all you need to do. The truth is, you're not going to get good quality recordings with a Yeti when you just set it on your desk. It's too far away, it's too low, and the farther away the mic is from your mouth, the more reverb it picks up. Let's do a quick test to hear just how much difference this makes. I'm going to do a couple of recordings in an untreated room. First, using the Yeti's included desk stand sitting on a table. Then I'll position it so it's much closer to my mouth, similar to how it is here, which is about 4 inches from my mouth. And the big thing to be listening for during these clips is how much reverb you hear in the first clip compared to the second. And for a third clip, I'll be using an Audio-Technica ATR 2100X, another USB microphone, and this one will be positioned similar to how I have the Yeti positioned right now. That way we can compare the differences between a condenser and a dynamic mic in an untreated space. So here I am on the Yeti out in an untreated space. I'm sure this is sounding a little different than my audio we just had in my studio. And that's because the acoustics in this room are terrible. So here I am on the Yeti out in an untreated space. And I'm sure this is sounding a little different than the audio we were just hearing from my studio. That's because the acoustics out in this room, they're terrible. And the Yeti acts like a magnifying glass that amplifies all of those imperfections in our space. That means that sometimes those sounds you don't really notice, or that your brain naturally tunes out, they show up in your recordings. And you may be asking yourself why any of this matters. For starters, the main thing is that you'll sound more professional and smarter when your audio sounds good. If I started my video and I sounded like this, how credible would I be? How long would you last before you stopped the video? Now, by moving the mic closer to my mouth, it's now about 4 inches away, I should be sounding more up front with less reverb, and overall just sounding a little bit better. There was a study a few years ago that was released that talked about how the sound quality affects how we perceive a presenter and a presentation. They found that as the audio quality decreased, so did the credibility of the presenter and the information being shared. And I'll include a link to one of the articles that summarizes those findings in the description below. And finally, here I am on the Audio-Technica ATR 2100X, which is a dynamic mic, and I have it positioned a couple of inches away from my mouth. You should be hearing less reverb with this mic than you have in the previous 2 clips. This one should sound the best out of the 3 clips because it's capturing less of the poor acoustics and more of my voice. This mic costs anywhere from $50 to $70, so you could easily save a good amount of money over the normal price of the Yeti, which typically sells for $129. Though with it being December, it's on sale for about $90, which still puts it about $40 above the ATR 2100. Now, let's return to the studio to finish up this video. Background noise is another one of those flaws that condensers magnify. It'll pick up everything from typing on a keyboard, tapping on a desk, to your neighbor's barking dog. And for creators who are recording in home environments, this can quickly become frustrating. I coached one client who was recording with a Yeti, and her main complaint was it would pick up the sound of airplanes flying overhead while she's recording inside. So she'd have to pause for a minute to let the plane pass before continuing. And I had another client who was using a condenser mic, and it was picking up the sound of, I guess, the rumble of road construction that was being done a couple of blocks away from her house. It just was this low rumble that you just couldn't get rid of without EQing out the low-end rumble. As I'm editing this, I realized that I missed a couple of things. First off, I'd planned on including a clip of me recording with a nicer condenser mic, just as a comparison, so that's what I'm doing here. Right now, I'm recording with our Townsend Labs Sphere L22. It's a modeling mic, and Townsend Labs was acquired by Universal Audio a couple of years ago, so this mic is now known as the Sphere DLX. I've been recording with the modeling turned off up to this point, and now I'll turn on the modeling and use a model of a U87, which is a commonly used voiceover mic. So I'll leave the U87 setting on for the remainder of this section. And the second thing I forgot to talk about is the problems that come with a USB-only mic. Computers struggle to work with multiple input sources. That's why we have audio interfaces and stuff like that. But what that means to you using a Yeti or really any USB-only mic is that it's mainly only suited for creating content by yourself. That would mean things where you are the only person being recorded in your space, like you're doing a solo podcast or a podcast where your guests or co-hosts are all remote. If you do need to record with someone else in person, you'll need to use an XLR mic, and rather, you'll need to use XLR mics and an audio interface, a podcast mixer, or a portable recorder. You have so many more options when you're using XLR mics. And I do have a video to help you decide the best type of interface or podcast mixer for your situation, if that's something you're interested in. And I'll link to that in the video description. And if I can, there should be a note up here somewhere linking to that video. And I think that covers everything, so let's get back to the video. And these are the challenges that make the Yeti far less plug and play than its marketing suggests. And with so many dynamic mics available, it's fair to ask, is the Yeti really worth the hassle? And it is worth noting here that none of what I'm talking about is specific to the Yeti itself, but these issues will be there with any kind of condenser mic. So what are the better options that are out there? This is where dynamic mics like the Shure MV7 and the Samson Q2U come into play. These mics they're designed to handle home recording setups a lot better because they offer better background noise rejection, and they just have kind of a warmer, more natural sound. I'm not sure if natural is the right way to put it, but it has more of a broadcast type sound that we're accustomed to. You can find decent USB powered dynamic mics in all price ranges. Your budget options are like the Samson Q2U and the Audio-Technica ATR 2100X, which I used in the earlier comparison. And both of those can be found between like $50 and $70. Moving up in price, you can usually find a Fifine K688 for, I think, $70, somewhere between like $50 and $70. The Samson Q9U is, I think, $149. The Rode PodMic USB is, I think, $199. And then we've got the Shure MV7, which tops the list at, I believe, $279 right now. And the MV7 is my number one recommendation for USB dynamic mics. It's actually one of my top recommendations for any content creation, even if you want an XLR mic, because they're just good sounding mics. All of these models are easy to set up, and they're far more forgiving of imperfections in your room. So stuff like the system noise, HVAC, stuff like that, even to a degree, background sounds like barking dogs. Dynamic mics, they're still going to pick up these sounds. They're just not going to be as loud and apparent. So whether you're podcasting, live streaming, recording voiceovers, or whatever content you're working on, these alternatives, they can help you achieve better sounding audio without requiring the type of room treatment and work in post-production that condenser mics require. So to wrap things up, the Blue Yeti, it's not a bad microphone, but for podcasting and live streaming in today's landscape, it's no longer the only choice for most content creators like it was 20 years ago when it first came out. Dynamic microphones, they just offer better performance in real-world scenarios where podcasters and live streamers are going to find themselves recording in. Dynamic microphones, they just offer better performance in the real-world scenarios we'll be using them in, especially for those who are recording in untreated or noisy spaces. When you're choosing a microphone, always consider your unique needs, budget, your environment, and your workflow. Don't let brand reputation or fancy marketing sway your decision. So before buying a Yeti, look at the other options that are available to you these days. Like I mentioned, dynamic mics like the Shure MV7 or the Q2U, the ATR 2100X. These are my go-to recommendations for podcasters and content creators. because they allow you to get better recordings with less fight. You're not having to fight your acoustics or the noise outside of your recording space nearly as much with a dynamic mic. As far as mics go, what do you currently use? Did you start with a Yeti or have you used a Yeti? What were your experiences when you switched from a Yeti to a dynamic mic? Or if you addressed your acoustics, how much did that improve your audio? Let me know down below. But if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more insights like these. And as always, if you've got any questions or comments, let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.